Major support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. And Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
So amid much uncertainty, we always want to know what's coming. It's just, of course, human nature. We want to know what's around the corner. We put a big premium on forecasting. What's the economy like? What's the weather going to be like? How's our health going to be next year, et cetera, et cetera. Welcome again to the most widely watched source of Carolina business, policy, and public affairs. I am Chris William. Happy holidays. How are people feeling and predicting the near term, especially this economy, real estate prices, prospects for business in 2019? Well, on this program, as always, we will take a look at those road signs. And later on, joining us, Jay Karen from the National Golf Course Owners Association. Stay with us.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. Visit us at southcarolinablues.com. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. BARINGS, a leading global asset management firm dedicated to meeting the evolving investment and capital needs of its clients. Learn more at barings.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Aaron Nelson from the Chapel Hill-Carrboro Chamber of Commerce, Carl Blackstone of the Columbia Chamber of Commerce, and special guest Jay Karen, CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association.
Welcome to our program. So, have I missed the No Shave November thing?
You did miss it, but we did not.
Hey, did you do it? I know you did it intentionally, right?
I did.
Okay.
And mine doesn't always look like this. I'm filling it in. I like this. Looks good.
All right. It's self-gratification here. You
Absolutely.
Guys, yeah, that's right. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Aaron, good to have you back. As always, Carl. Let's start with this idea. I want to read this to you. There was a recent survey PricewaterhouseCoopers did of CEOs, both small company and large company CEOs, about how they're, quote unquote, feeling about the economy. And the title quote was "The Anxious Optimist in the Corner Office." Is that descriptive enough, Aaron? Do you get that sense?
That's really interesting. An anxious optimist. I'm hearing a lot and feeling a lot of optimism, particularly locally. Yes. Folks feel like North Carolina and the Research Triangle region is still a wonderful place to grow and start a business. In the Chapel Hill market, to be close to a university, access to talent, access to research, all of those are still really good, and the general economic conditions are great. Anxiety comes from mostly what's happening on the federal level, a lot of discussion about the rules and regulations and taxes, and then some anxiety about what's happening at the state.
Mm-hmm. Carl, same thing. We're past the midterms. You think that's kind of a load off for folks?
I think it's a huge load off, and now there's answers to those questions. What's going to happen in D.C.? The southern half of the United States is in a good position, and the growth rates that we're seeing are phenomenal. I think there is an optimism with CEOs that I talk to. Specifically, we've got a stable system somewhat in the state of South Carolina. The Fed now is a little more stable with a split Congress. Mm-hmm. I think that bodes well. The last time we've had this, we're in a second longest expansion in our nation's history. It could play out a little bit longer now that we have a more of a stable environment in D.C.
So the congressional split, as you described it, Carl, and what's happened in North Carolina, Aaron, that now Republicans don't have a supermajority and will have to maybe play a little bit nicer with their colleagues. Will that hurt? Not hurt, that's not the right way to say it. Do you expect that to help or hurt what businesses are trying to do in 2019 and beyond?
I expect it to help. I think that when people have to cooperate better, be a little more collaborative, don't just get your way and don't have to listen to anyone else, that we'll have better policy get made. Mm-hmm. We've done a great job of making a pro-business environment in North Carolina, and I do credit the Republicans for that. But it isn't as simple as it used to be, where you thought Republicans were going to be good for business and Democrats not. This Republican, when it was a supermajority, made some choices that were painful for businesses and for North Carolina's reputation. Mm-hmm.
There was a dog-legged left, and that's my term, in politics between Republicans and Democrats nationally, certainly in North Carolina, a little bit in South Carolina, but South Carolina still has that very red vein that runs through it. Was the Arrington race, the Cunningham race down in Charleston, the congressional seat was won. But is that a one-off, Carl? Do you still expect that the Republicans have a pretty firm hold in the Palmetto State?
They do, and that particular case was defined by some environmental issues more than anything else. And the coast is very conservative from an environmental standpoint. I mean, the conservation is a predominant issue, and the candidate made some bad choices on that to start her campaign and never recovered. I don't see it a wholesale change in South Carolina anytime soon. But I do think the more moderate candidate in that race won. And we're looking forward to see what Mr. Cunningham can do. I think it speaks well. I think we were talking about this a little earlier. I think the country is looking for just not a divisive temperament and one that working together in a conciliatory mode. And I think it's good.
Yeah.
The fighting's exhausting. I mean, it's exhausting. It makes people not want to pay attention to what's going on and to just simply focus. And that's so, our hashtag would be double down on local. That the stuff that's going on the federal and the state level sometimes seems beyond our control and influence. If we can just make our local economies successful, if we focus there, we'll do better. But it feels so tumultuous.
Yeah.
So it's very nice that these are now resolved. Your question about sort of in politics, North Carolina, if you add up all the congressional votes, it was only 51-49 Republicans to Democrats, yet still we'll have, 10 Republican congressional folks and 2 Democratic. The state, I think, is changing, led by the urban areas.
Well, that's an interesting point here. And so when you drill down in the urban areas and you specifically look at the largest, Wake County, Raleigh, Triangle, Charlotte, Mecklenburg,
right.
You see that Mecklenburg County Commission now, all Democrats. That was a surprise to those that live in the Piedmont. And then even Wake, does Wake have one Republican on the Wake County?
I think Wake is all Democrats and has been for a while. Durham is all Democrats and has been for a while. Orange County is all Democrats and have been for a while. So in the Triangle, those 3 counties are 19 Democratic county commissioners, I think, and 0 Republican.
What does that say about urban cores?
Our urban areas are far more progressive, lean far more Democrat, and they're made up of folks that have come here somewhat from other places and come bringing ideas from outside. North Carolina's always been a place where people brought great ideas from other places. Those growth in our urban areas, and I think those urban areas are growing faster now, and so are going to have greater influence over the general state politics in the future.
Identical. I mean, you're talking in South Carolina, Greenville, the downtown Greenville areas. Huge transformation, predominant Democrat. Columbia has always been a very strong Democratic seat, and then Charleston as well. Charleston, the Charleston core, the peninsula, has always voted very strong.
So
Democrat.
that doesn't worry you at all that kind of, and I'll call it imbalance in urban core political leadership, will not undermine any momentum going in community development or economic development?
It makes you think differently on how everything is local. So dealing with the local communities, it takes a little bit more of a balance to understand that the business community's needs are what drives the economy in those local communities, but it's all local.
Go ahead.
Well, I think there is a pro-business left, and particularly we see it in our community, where folks they would be
pro-business left or pro-business remaining.
No, there's a pro-business left in terms of like right and left politics. There's a pro-business left. It's a group that doesn't care who you marry, doesn't care who you sleep with, doesn't care about a bunch of social choices that you might make, but are unabashedly pro-business, interested in recruiting and retaining talent, growing jobs, and say economic success. They really see economic success as the strategy for pulling people out of poverty, for making sure that many of their social objectives get accomplished.
Let me pin you down on one thing, Carl, and I know this is your area of dominant influence, and we're talking about the Midlands, Columbia and the Midlands, and Lexington and Richland County. Do you get a sense of, and it's probably not a fair question to ask you because you've got a lot invested in this, but do you get a sense that Columbia will figure out what those economic development challenges are that will help them, and this is my term, to be able to catch up to what the upstate and the low country have done?
We're in that process now. It's really the private sector taking the bull by the horn and realizing that we control the destiny of the Midlands, and so we have to have more proactive economic incentives. We have to be more competitive, and but we can't rely on the public sector to dig us out of this hole. We've got to do it ourselves. And so I totally agree with Aaron. There's folks on the left and the right are putting aside any political differences to say this is the best for economic development, for the future of our kids, for recruitment of companies. We've got to change the way we're doing business.
A couple just one question, but two issues that are related, Aaron. We got about a minute left. HQ2 has now made their decision. They're going to be in Queens, New York, and Northern Virginia, which is basically D.C. Was that surprising to you? That's the first question. The second question is, and let's start with the second question first. What happened to Apple? For a while, it was the worst kept secret that they were going to relocate to North Carolina with a major part of their business. What happened?
You know, and it's so odd. You're right. And we were talking about it earlier. It's sort of like poof, evaporated. I don't hear anybody talking about it anymore. Either HQ2 sucked all the air out of that conversation, or the election distracted us away from it, or a hurricane. There's been a lot of things that have been competing for mind share, and I just haven't heard anybody talking about it at all.
Does HQ2, did that decision, does that surprise you in any way?
It's a wonder. It would have been a wonderful gift to our community that would have come with some consequences, both positive and negative. I know lots of folks were looking forward to it, and it would have changed our community forever. And now that that's not here, we got our heads back down and continue to work on other things.
Yeah, less distraction and press on. Thanks, gentlemen. We're going to meet our guest in just a moment. Next week on this program, Dr. Nathan Hatch is the president of Wake Forest University. He will join us again. Also, the North Carolina Treasurer, Dale Falwell, takes his job very seriously as the chief financial officer for the Old North State, and we'll find out what the latest things that they are working on. And then a program we call Retail Renovation, and that is how retail has changed and how it is changing in light of not just fourth quarter retail sales, but what they're doing differently now in response to all the online activity that has gone on. You know, the game of golf embodies many passions, especially here in the Carolinas. That should be no surprise. Real estate, vacationing, community development, of course, great views, exercise, and of course, competitiveness. Well, a decade or so ago, if you remember, we seemingly couldn't get enough of the game in the form of standalone courses that were popping up everywhere, golf course communities that seemed to go on forever. But where is the sport now? Has its interest and subscriptions peaked? Well, from Charleston and the Low Country, joining us now is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Golf Course Owners Association, Jay Karen. Jay, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris.
Was I right about the November no shave thing? Because
this is an all year. This is all year.
Not afraid of that. Jay, let me recount some numbers, and I know you well, but for our viewers. So in the Carolinas, golf is directly responsible for about 70,000 jobs, more than $5 billion in annual revenue, and we have just short of 1,000 courses, about 975 courses. But now there has been the number of people playing the sport seems to be trending down. Am I right about that? And how do you respond to that as an association?
Sure. Well, supply and demand is an interesting thing in the golf industry because the supply was influenced so much for years by housing development. There was an exuberance around golf, there's no question about it, but a lot of housing developers built golf courses because they wanted to sell more houses without much regard to actual demand for play. And so we had a slight rise in demand during the Tiger effect and so forth, and it's been flattened and it's kind of come down marginally. But the number of golf courses has been closing, and that's gotten the headline is how many golf courses are closing. But for us, we see supply and demand coming into a nice balance. But we're looking at the demand side. That's the most important thing here is how many people are going to play the game. And we're down to about 23 or 24 million from a height of about 30 million. But there is no existential crisis here because the indicators are very strong. First of all, we have 23 million people playing the game. That is incredibly strong. It's an $84 billion economy in the U.S. But right now, if you look at the future indicators, diversity is up amazingly in the sport from the under 30 crowd.
You mean the players on the tours or the people that are
customers,
actually playing
the people that we have two planets in the golf universe. We've got the tour, I call it Golf Hollywood, basically. What's happening in tour, television, fandom, all of that. But then you've got this other planet where all the golf courses exist, where people come and pay to play and sustain the 15,000 golf courses around the United States. That's who I represent. Well, you look at youth participation right now, and that's our future customer base. Participation in youth golf is on the rise so sharply when you look at other sports when you're seeing decline. So, I mean, PGA Junior League Golf is an example. There are 52,000 kids now playing in that particular program, where there were 8,000 kids about 5 or 6 years ago in that program. So we're seeing a lot of parents are finding a pathway to golf now, which that really didn't exist before, as golf as a team sport. So we're very optimistic about the future of the game. While we see peaks and valleys in any economy, yes, the demand's been going down, but we've got a lot of indication of why it's going to stay strong for a long time.
So there were a lot of similarities that people would draw between the game of golf and NASCAR as a sport, to say that NASCAR went through the same type of kind of growth and then retraction. But you see that as two different.
Very different, because NASCAR is very much a fan-based sport. I mean, you don't have a lot of people out there racing cars.
Right.
We have a fandom, and we have people paying to play, and it's a lifelong sport. So you have to look at each one. The fandom has not really taken a hit. I mean, the tour is still off the charts. LPGA is on the rise as far as fandom, excitement around it, viewers, all of that. Purses going up. That's still incredibly strong. Mm-hmm. But we have to look at the golf courses and the real estate business and the land business and what happens there. That's what I concern myself with.
Aaron?
So it's really interesting, as a person who's just recently gotten myself a used set of clubs and I'm starting to enjoy this.
And we thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Talk to me a little bit about what you see as golf courses are closing, what is happening with the land? What are people doing with that?
Very good question. And that is, there's no large trend on that, because every land situation is different. It depends upon what your zoning is. Are you surrounded by houses or not? And what are the local politics involved in seeing a golf course close? Nobody likes to see a golf course close for all kinds of reasons. It's actually hard to get out of the business if you think about it, because you're tied to 200 acres of land. What happens to this? So we're finding some courses are turning into parkland, some courses are turning into houses. Some operators, like one in Columbia, a friend of mine, Rock Lucas, he has Charwood Country Club. He had 27 holes, closed 9 of those, and now he has an 18-hole facility. He's incredibly happy, and probably his bottom line might be even better because of it. So all kinds of things are happening at that local level, but it does create some conflict when you have maybe 200 homeowners that thought they were going to look out their backyard at a golf course forever, but there's nothing on the deed that promised that golf course.
Interesting.
So, first and foremost, our members, golf course owners, they're in the land business. That's where the value is usually tied up. So, and we, as you would imagine, as business owners, they'd want to exercise whatever economically makes sense for their asset.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay, tell me, let's talk, Topgolf's taking off. I know they have a facility here. We just got a new a business in Columbia that opened up. It's a Topgolf simulator where you can go during lunch and get lessons, or go out with a group of friends and have drinks and play golf. How does that translate into courses and the future of golf as a whole?
Carl, it's a great question. So Topgolf has been really the darling of the golf industry for the past, say, 3 to 5 years. And they're getting millions of folks coming in and spending a lot of money on food and beverage while hitting a golf ball. Basically, it's a food and beverage business where they get to swing at an inanimate object and have a lot of fun at it. And I believe anything that puts a golf club in someone's hand is good for our members in the game of golf. But what you're seeing at that little facility that has 5 simulators, to me, that is the future of the game as far as expanding the business. Not necessarily displacing golf courses. I think that can expand the business. So we might be able to turn an $84 billion business into a $120 billion business because of the simulator concept. And for the folks watching, that's basically where you stand in like a small bay, a room, and you're hitting into a screen, and you could be hitting into Pebble Beach, and the graphics are amazing, and you can change your lie and all of these things. A lot of fun. What I'm hoping is that the golf course of the future is going to be indoor and outdoor, under the moon and under the sun, so that if it's raining, you could still go to the golf course and play at the simulators. If you want to play at 9 o'clock at night, you can now still go to the golf course and have a good time. So I think there's a world of opportunity bringing technology to the green grass shop. My concern is that the retail centers around America is where this may happen. If that's the case, then the economics go to the retail centers. They don't go to the existing golf courses, who I represent. So we're trying to get our members positioned to make the capital expenditures to put in this new technology to expand their business.
Let's unpack that a little bit further. So to keep it real and to keep it on real turf, it would seem like there's that you could leverage the idea of a par 3, a shorter course that you could play 2 hours over a long lunch. Why hasn't that been exploited?
Well, it's always been there. 9-hole rounds have been there forever, right?
Yeah.
And There's been this forward tee movement in the industry now for several years, where a golf course will have 7 sets of tees. So you think, oh, we want to play a par 3 course. We'll play from 4,500 yards, the forward set of tees. But there's a lot of ego tied up in where you play and where you tee off from. So there's a lot of reticence to move up, sets of tees. So we deal with that culturally. But something that's happened in North Carolina at Pinehurst is a perfect example. They built this short course called the Cradle. It's a 9-hole golf course, and the holes range in length between like 50-something yards and 120 yards. And it is incredibly popular right now at that resort. And that tells you something, that people just want to go out there, have a good time, play a short course, maybe drink some beers, and have fun with their friends. So there is definitely a movement towards shorter courses, shorter experiences with a premium on fun.
And you could convert existing properties or to do that?
Absolutely. Well, either you have extra acreage and you can build a short course, or for charitable and corporate outings, convert your course to a short course so everybody can have a good time. Sure. And that's one of the problems with corporate golf, is that all the single-digit handicappers are loving it, and all the folks that are terrible at the game, they're thinking, this is the one time I play a year. But if they set up the course so that every hole is a par 3, man, everybody would have a good time.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting. It is. It's like I don't know, is there a pickleball movement in what pickleball's done for tennis, or finding ways to make it shorter and more interesting? But those super short ones that you were just describing sounds like
it goes beyond that too, Aaron. It goes beyond just short courses. It's about, what's the food and beverage experience like at a golf course? Is it still the Lay's potato chips and the hot dog, or is it the local craft beer and some really interesting tacos? And so a lot of golf courses, to stay relevant in the future, they're looking at their entire business and figuring out, how do we inject better hospitality, better food and beverage, so that people choose us over the other activities in their lives.
Can you order delivery from the course? You just hit on your little
There
thing
is, get this, there's a course in North Dakota that has drone technology now that will deliver your food out to wherever you are in the golf course.
It is a perfect place for drones to be doing things, right? Just bring me that beer.
The 6-pack on the 15th tee, please. Absolutely.
That's perfect. I can't wait. Where'd you say, North Dakota?
No, you got to go North Dakota.
And you have like 2 months to play.
Exactly.
July 4th weekend in
I
winter.
know. I'll send you all there. That is going to be great.
Carl.
Yeah.
What other challenges are facing your traditional golf courses, other than the social impacts of the game, but from a technology standpoint on the course and the immigration issues and the workforce issues? What else is impacting golf?
A lot. Workforce is a big one. Because when you're in the golf business, you're in the land business, you're in the farming business, you're in the food and beverage business, you're in the event business, you're in the sport business. So finding the right labor to help your business is always a challenge. Where, say, 20 or 30 years ago, a lot of people loved working in the golf industry just to be around it. They wanted to orbit the industry and be at a golf course. And, a lot of folks didn't get paid well to do that, but they loved being around golf because they could play. And times have changed a little bit, so it's harder recruiting folks, to be part of working at golf courses. But organizations like the PGA of America and the golf course superintendents, they've taken a real effort in looking at the future labor force and making sure that they're training their members to be excellent at golf operations. But on the landscaping and course maintenance side, we have issues with getting help from foreign workers. The H-2B visa problems that we've been having in Washington translates to a lot of resorts around the Carolinas as well. But costs for operating are going to continue to go up. And the challenges we have are that the price to play golf hasn't really gone up along with the costs. And so from an economic standpoint, to get back to your question, the traditional problems that the business is going to have is that profitability. How do we get more revenue out of our existing businesses? How do we maybe employ some dynamic pricing and other really interesting economic theory to pricing tee times and other things, and maybe squeezing more profits out of the existing facilities? So a lot of typical problems you find at restaurants, hotels. Golf is not immune to those same issues.
Yeah, and again, to take that a little bit further, Jay, and we've got about a minute and a half left, you got this thing called OTTA, online tee time agencies, interacting with Expedia, et cetera, and there's a rub there. So is that enough to really undermine more rounds? Well,
the issue there, Chris, is that the online tee time agencies, the Golf Now and teeoff.com in our industry, it's a great place to go book a round of golf. There's no question about it. But the question is, are they generating demand? And I'll say that Expedia has never caused me to take a trip I wasn't going to already take. But it's nice that the booking tool is there. So it's a new cost of doing business for golf courses to put their inventory online and have to pay a lot of money for the bookings that are coming through that. And the question is growing the economic pie of golf, or is it taking more out of the pie? And that's a challenge because it creates this downward price pressure. When you aggregate all these tee times online, the golfers are shopping, they're saying, where's the cheap place to play?
Right.
At what time is available? Bam, that's what I want. So it's commoditized in some ways, the tee time, and that has a downward pressure on pricing. When costs are going up, it's a difficult scenario, but it's still, despite that, it's still a very good business to be in.
Thank you for being on the program. What are you hitting now? What do you shoot?
I'm 6.5 handicap, but I had a personal best last week, and I shot a 69.
That's good.
For the folks
That's
at home,
good.
it's legitimate. And I played with the PGA of America CEO, so you can't question it when you got the PGA of America CEO playing with me. Yeah.
Well, nice job. Thanks for being on the program. Please come back.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Carl, nice to see you. as
Likewise.
always.
Thank you for having
Aaron,
me.
as well.
It was a pleasure.
Good to see you.
Good
Thank
to see you.
Until next week, I'm Chris William. We hope your game, of course, and your weekend is good too. Thank you. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by the Duke Endowment, BARINGS, Grant Thornton, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.